Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be diving into something I know you're really interested in,
Oh, yeah?
the U.S. Space Force.
Right.
You've sent a ton of sources,
Yeah?
news articles,
Mm-hmm.
recruitment videos,
Uh-huh.
even some deep dives into the tech they're using.
Cool.
And it's obvious you want to go way beyond just what it is
Yeah.
and really try to get a grasp on how people view it
Right.
and how it's evolving.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time to be looking at this.
Isn't it?
For sure, because it's so new.
Yeah.
The Space Force, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
watching a brand new organism
Yeah.
evolve.
Right in front of us.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack all this.
Okay.
The Space Force
Yes.
was officially established
When was it?
in 2019
Okay.
as like a brand new branch of the U.S. Armed Forces.
Interesting.
You know, when I first heard about it, I'll admit,
Yeah.
my mind went straight to Stinger Wars.
Of course.
Like pew-pew, space lasers.
Right.
You know, the whole shebang.
Yeah. That's a pretty common reaction, I think,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah. People hear Space Force and they just think
I know.
it's all going to be like some crazy,
Yeah.
space battles and stuff.
Right.
But the reality is
Yeah.
their mission
Mm-hmm.
is a lot more grounded than that.
Okay.
They're really focused on protecting U.S. interests in space.
Okay.
And that includes
Yeah.
things that we rely on every day.
Down here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like GPS.
GPS is a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it.
Okay.
What would happen
Oh, gosh.
if suddenly all of our GPS systems
Oh, man.
stop working?
Yeah, that would be
Chaos.
a nightmare.
Yeah, you're talking navigation apps would go haywire.
Oh, for sure.
Financial transactions could get disrupted.
Oh, wow.
Even emergency services
Yeah.
would be impacted.
I didn't even think about that.
It's all connected.
Wow. Okay, so it's about protecting those things that are up
Yeah.
there
Right.
that we use down here.
That we rely on down here, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, but how is it actually structured within the military?
Yeah,
That's what I want to know.
one thing that I noticed in all of your sources
Yeah.
was this relationship with the Air Force.
Right. I saw that.
It keeps coming up.
I did.
And it's a really interesting aspect
It is.
because
It is.
it's organized right now as like a separate but equal branch
Mhm.
under the Department of the Air Force.
Okay.
So think of it like the Marine Corps,
Right.
which is a part of the Navy.
Okay, so it's kind of its own thing,
It is.
but it's also still,
But it's still under
yeah, like connected to.
the umbrella of
Yeah.
the Air Force.
That seems like it could lead to some
I mean,
awkward family dinners.
Oh, for sure.
Like Thanksgiving's going to be weird.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's going to be rough.
So there's definitely a lot of discussion
There is.
about whether,
About whether this structure
yeah,
gives them enough independence to really like develop their own identity.
gotcha.
But the flip side is
Mm-hmm.
being a part of the Air Force gives them access
Yeah.
to a lot of the existing infrastructure.
Yeah. Make
And
less.
experience.
Yeah.
That's already there.
That's true. I did see, though, that they're working on their own dress uniform.
That's right.
It seems like a pretty clear signal that they're trying to create their own.
It's all about symbolism.
Yeah.
They want to set themselves apart visually,
Yeah.
especially from the Air Force.
Right. They want to be their own thing.
They want to do their own thing.
But it's not just about the uniforms, right?
No, it's about establishing a distinct set of values and
Mhm.
traditions
Yeah.
for this brand new branch.
But space isn't just a U.S. domain.
Right.
What I'm really curious about is
Yeah.
how are they working with other countries?
That's a great question.
Because there were a couple articles that were mentioning international collaboration.
That is absolutely crucial.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You can't just have one country
Right.
calling all the shots up in space.
It's not the Wild West.
Right. Well, it kind of is in a way,
Okay.
but we don't want it to be a free-for-all.
Gotcha.
The Space Force is actively working with other nations
Okay.
to develop what are called norms of behavior.
Norms of behavior.
Yeah. Basically, it's about avoiding misunderstandings
Okay.
and miscalculations
Okay.
that could lead to conflict.
So it's kind of like
It is.
setting up rules of the road.
It is.
More of the road.
Rules of the road for space, exactly.
Yeah, because with more and more countries,
Right.
and even private companies,
Yeah.
launching things up into orbit,
It's
it's getting kind of crowded up there.
It's
yeah.
getting crowded. And the thing is,
Yeah.
defining what aggression actually means
Right.
in space
Yeah.
is a lot trickier
Yeah.
than it might sound, like
Okay.
you were saying.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just draw lines
Right.
on a map.
There are no borders up there.
There are no borders exactly.
So how do you
Yeah.
figure out
That's a great question.
what crosses the line?
Yeah.
Like from harmless to hostile?
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah, like if a satellite just like bumps into another one.
No.
Is that like,
Is that an act of war?
yeah, or is it an accident?
Right, like somebody just drifted
Right.
a little too close?
Yeah.
Whoops, my bad.
Yeah.
Those are exactly the types of questions
Oh, God.
that
Yeah.
policymakers and military strategists
Yeah.
are dealing with.
Wow.
It's a huge gray area.
I bet.
Yeah.
And to make things even more complicated,
Oh, yeah.
you've got technologies
Right.
that could be used for peaceful or
Right.
military
It's
purposes.
Exactly. Dual use.
So something that could be used to like fix a satellite
Uh-huh.
could also be used to like,
Mess with it
yeah, mess with it.
or disable it.
Yeah, that's scary.
It is.
So how do you stop that?
That's where diplomacy comes in.
Okay.
And clear communication, working with other nations
Right.
to establish a code of conduct
Okay.
for responsible behavior in space.
So like a set of ground rules.
It is a set of ground rules that
Yeah.
everyone can hopefully agree on.
So we talked
In-
about like the
Standards
the 5 standards of behavior.
outlined by the U.S. Secretary of Defense.
Exactly.
What are the chances of
Oh,
actually getting everybody?
It's a big lift
Yeah.
to actually get everyone on board with that. It's
Yeah.
a huge challenge.
It is, because what if, like,
It-
other countries just want to use space to, like,
well, some countries do see it that way
yeah.
as an opportunity to show off their power.
Right.
Or, to even potentially,
Yeah.
start conflict.
Yeah.
But the alternative
Yep.
is a free-for-all.
Right.
And I don't think anybody really wants that.
No, because if things
go haywire, get too out of hand up there,
yeah,
it could make space unusable
it could.
for everybody.
Yeah, it's in everyone's best interest
Right.
to have a space environment
Yeah.
that is stable and predictable.
Yeah, because who wants to drive on a highway
Yeah, who wants to be
where everybody's ignoring the rules?
driving on a highway where it's just chaos?
Yeah, you're just asking for a massive pileup.
You're asking for a major accident.
Okay, so that's the diplomatic side of things.
Right.
But I'm also curious about
Yeah.
how technology
Oh,
is changing the game in space.
absolutely.
Because we've talked about like
Uh-huh.
the potential for like space-based cargo delivery.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, what about the potential for
Oh.
those technologies to be used for?
Not so peaceful purposes.
Yeah.
Well, technology is always a double-edged sword.
Right.
What can be used for good
Uh-huh.
can also be used for harm.
Right.
And that's something that the Space Force has to think about constantly.
Yeah, there was one article that mentioned the Air Force's Vanguard program,
Oh, yeah?
which is exploring
They're exploring all sorts of possibilities.
yeah, the possibility of using space
Right.
for rapid cargo delivery.
Yeah.
Like
Delivering supplies
yeah, delivering supplies
anywhere in the world
anywhere.
in just a few hours.
That's mind-blowing.
It's pretty amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But that also raises some serious questions.
That does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you can deliver supplies that quickly, you could also deliver
Other things.
weapons.
Exactly. You could deliver weapons.
And then that would just blur the lines
It does.
even further.
Between traditional warfare
Right?
and space warfare.
Absolutely. It blurs those lines.
Well-
And that's why these conversations are so important.
They are.
Yeah. We can't just pretend
No.
that these issues don't exist.
Right.
We have to talk about them. Yeah, we have to think about the ethical implications.
Exactly. We have to
Okay.
think about the ethics
Yeah.
before these technologies become so advanced.
That we can't control them.
Exactly.
So it's not about stopping innovation.
Right.
It's about making sure
It's about making sure
it's done responsibly.
it's done responsibly.
Exactly. We need to be steering the ship,
We do.
not the other way around.
Not the other way around.
Right. And that brings us to another aspect of space
Oh.
that I found pretty mind-blowing.
What's that?
The sheer amount of stuff
Oh, yeah.
that's already up there.
It is
Hey.
like all the junk.
It is a cosmic junkyard up there.
Yeah.
It really is.
I read somewhere that the number of active satellites
Yeah.
has like more than doubled
Oh, yeah. More than doubled.
since the start of the pandemic.
Yeah. It's incredible.
That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
Zipping around up there.
It is a lot of stuff zipping around.
Those-
So
That's where space traffic management comes in.
right. The Space Force for keeping track of all those objects.
That's right.
And making sure they don't hit each other,
Keeping them from crashing into each other.
like air traffic control.
Yeah. It's exactly like air traffic control.
But for space.
But for space, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. But isn't that
Yeah.
a logistical nightmare?
It is a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
It's a huge job.
It's thousands of objects,
You know.
moving at thousands of miles an hour.
Right.
How do you even keep track of all that?
Well, it is a challenge,
Yeah.
but they do a pretty good job of it.
So it's not just about
Yeah.
preventing damage to satellites, right?
It's not just about protecting the satellites themselves.
Yeah.
We're also talking about the risk
Of creating.
of creating more debris,
Yeah.
which could make space unusable.
Yeah, you're talking about the Kessler syndrome?
The Kessler syndrome, exactly.
Like one collision.
Yeah, one collision.
Leads to another.
It leads to a chain reaction.
And another and another.
Exactly.
And then you just have this clash.
And end up with a cloud of debris.
That's like a death trap.
That's basically a death trap.
For anything.
For anything trying to operate in space.
Right.
It's a scary thought.
It is.
But it is a real possibility.
Yeah.
If we don't manage space traffic.
Okay.
Carefully.
So that's government-run satellites.
Right.
But what about all the private companies
that
are launching their own stuff?
That's a whole other ballgame.
How do they?
The rise of commercial space activity is a real game changer.
Is it?
It's opening up
Okay.
all sorts of amazing possibilities.
Cool.
But it also creates new challenges.
Yeah, like are there any rules?
That's the question.
In place.
Yeah, are there any rules?
Sure.
Are there any regulations?
Yeah, that these companies are.
Yeah, are they playing by the rules? Or is it just a free-for-all? Well, there are some international agreements.
Okay.
But the problem is they were mostly written back when space was dominated by governments.
Right.
So they're not really equipped
to
deal with
the complexities
of a commercialized space environment.
So we need a new set of rules.
We do.
For the new space age.
For the new space age, we need a new rule book.
Yeah, because we want to encourage innovation. But we also want to...
We want to encourage economic growth.
Yeah.
But we also want to protect the space environment.
Right.
For everybody.
Yeah. It's a tricky balance.
It is a tricky balance to strike.
You don't want to stifle innovation.
Right.
But you also don't want to end up...
But you don't want it to be the Wild West.
With a cosmic Wild West.
Exactly.
Right. And this brings us to another interesting question.
Okay, what's that?
How does the rise of commercial space activity impact national security?
That is a great question.
You mean because now you have these private companies launching satellites that could be used.
That could potentially be used.
To like gather intelligence or even support military operations.
It really blurs the lines between the public and private sectors.
It does.
In a way that we've never seen before.
Right. So on the one hand,
that
could give the Space Force access to
all these new
a whole range of
capabilities and technologies.
So they might not have otherwise.
Right.
But on the other hand, you're relying
on private companies.
On these private companies.
Yeah.
And what about the security?
Right. What about the security of their systems?
Yeah.
What if they get hacked?
Right. What if their data gets compromised?
Exactly.
So it's like...
a whole new set.
It's a whole new set of challenges.
Yeah.
For national security.
For national security, for sure.
Wow. It seems like the Space Force is having to constantly evolve to keep up with this.
With the rapidly changing...
the rapidly changing landscape of space.
But
what about the people who make up the Space Force?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because, we talked about recruitment earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm curious.
Yeah.
What kind of people are they looking for?
Yeah, what kind of people?
Because what they're realizing is they need more than just traditional military skills.
Right.
They need people with diverse talents.
Like what?
Cybersecurity experts, engineers, data analysts.
Okay.
People who can think outside the box.
There was one recruitment video that was like calling for people with skills and gaming and a passion for space.
That's pretty far from the stereotypical soldier, boots on the ground kind of person.
Yeah.
They need people who are comfortable with technology.
Right, yeah.
People who grew up with it.
Right.
People who see space as a place of opportunity.
Right.
Not just a place...
just a place of conflict.
Yeah. They need people who are tech savvy.
Yeah.
Adaptable. Innovative. Because space is a pretty unconventional battleground.
Yeah, this has been fascinating.
It has.
Like, we've gone from space lasers to space traffic cops.
It's been a wild ride.
In just a few minutes. I can't wait to see
Yeah.
what else we uncover.
Me too.
As we delve deeper into this fascinating world.
It's a fascinating topic.
So stay tuned
Yeah.
for part 2 of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll be exploring the challenges of emerging technologies and the impact of commercial space activities.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back to our deep dive into the U.S. Space Force.
So now it's time to go deeper.
Yeah, let's do it.
One thing I found really thought-provoking was this whole issue of, like, defining aggression in space.
Right.
It's not as straightforward.
It's not easy.
As it might seem, right?
It's a real head-scratcher.
Yeah.
For policymakers and military strategists alike.
Right. It's not like there are clear borders up there.
No, you can't just draw lines in space.
Like, you can't.
What do you do on a map? On a map.
Exactly.
Yeah, so how do you even begin to figure out?
Yeah, how do you even begin to figure out
what crosses the line?
What's a hostile act
from a harmless action
versus an innocent action
to a hostile one?
That's the question.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's trying to figure out.
And it's something the Space Force is grappling with.
It's a constant challenge.
All the time, right? Yeah, because an action?
Yeah.
That might seem perfectly innocent.
Right.
In one context.
Yeah.
Could be perceived as a threat.
Totally. One of the sources used the example of satellite servicing. Like a satellite.
Like a satellite designed to refuel or repair other satellites.
Right. Could also be used to...
Would also be used to tamper with them.
Yeah. Or even, like, disable them.
Or even disable them, exactly.
So that dual-use capability...
Yeah, it makes things tricky.
Makes it really tricky to establish...
Very tricky.
Like a clear red line.
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
So how do you prevent those misunderstandings?
That's a great question.
From escalating into...
Right. How do you prevent things...
Something more serious.
From escalating into conflict?
Especially
when you're dealing with countries.
When you're dealing with countries that might see space as an opportunity to...
Right. To show off their power.
Yeah.
To, assert their dominance.
Yeah. So diplomacy and communication.
Yeah, communication is key.
Right.
It's about working with other countries.
Yeah.
To establish a code of conduct for responsible behavior in space.
Yeah. So like rules of the road.
Rules of the road, but for space.
But for space.
Exactly.
We talked about the 5 standards of behavior for space.
Yes, we did.
Outlined by the U.S. Secretary of Defense.
Right.
But what are the chances of actually getting everyone on board?
It's a challenge.
With that.
It's a big diplomatic challenge.
Because I feel like...
Yeah, because not every country is going to agree with...
those standards.
Yeah, this is our opportunity to...
Right. Some countries might see it as a way to limit their own ambitions in space.
Right.
But I think there's a growing recognition that no one benefits from a chaotic and unpredictable space environment.
Like, who wants to
it's like
drive on a highway?
Who wants to drive on a highway?
Where everybody's ignoring the rules, where everyone's just doing their own thing.
Right. You're just asking for...
Yeah, you're asking for trouble.
A massive pileup.
You're asking for a major accident.
Oh, so that's the diplomatic side.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about... how technology is changing the game in space.
Technology is a game changer.
We talked about
for sure
the potential for things like space-based cargo delivery. But what about the potential for those technologies to be used for less peaceful purposes?
Yeah, technology is always a double-edged sword.
Right.
What can be used for good can also be used for harm.
Right. And that's something the Space Force has to be very mindful of.
Absolutely. They have to be thinking about that all the time.
In one of the articles, there was a mention of the Air Force's Vanguard program.
Oh, yeah, I read about that one.
Which is exploring the possibility of using space for rapid cargo delivery.
They're talking about delivering supplies anywhere in the world in a matter of hours.
That's crazy.
It's incredible technology.
But it also raises some serious questions.
Yeah, because if you can deliver supplies that quickly, you could also deliver weapons.
And wouldn't that blur the lines between traditional warfare?
It would blur the lines even further.
And space warfare even further.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important. It is to have these open and honest conversations.
Yeah, we need to be talking about these things.
About these technologies.
Openly and honestly.
Not just
within the military.
Within the military, but with the public. With policymakers.
With the public, with policymakers. With the international community.
With the international community.
Yeah. Everybody needs to be involved in this conversation.
We can't just bury our heads in the sand.
We can't just ignore it.
And pretend these challenges don't exist.
Right. We have to be proactive.
Yeah. We need to be thinking.
Not reactive.
About the ethical implications of these technologies.
We need to be thinking about the ethics.
Before...
Too late.
They become so advanced that they're impossible to control.
Exactly.
So it's not about stopping innovation. It's about making sure
it's about guiding it
it's done responsibly.
in the right direction.
Right. We need to make sure we're steering the ship.
We do.
Not the other way around.
We need to be in control.
And that brings us to another aspect of space that I found pretty mind-blowing.
What's that?
The sheer amount of stuff that's already up there.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the junk.
It's a cosmic junkyard up there.
It is a cosmic junkyard.
It really is.
It's everything from active satellites.
It is.
To defunct spacecraft.
To pieces of debris.
To pieces of debris.
Yeah, old rocket parts.
I read somewhere that the number of active satellites...
I think I saw that same article.
Has more than doubled.
Yeah, it's more than doubled.
Since the start of the pandemic.
Since the beginning of 2020.
That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff zipping around up there.
Zipping around up there.
It is.
And that's where
space traffic management comes in.
Space traffic management comes in.
It's a big job.
The Space Force is responsible for...
Yeah, they're responsible for keeping track of all those objects.
Keeping track of all that.
And making sure they don't collide.
Making sure they don't hit each other.
With each other, yeah.
It's like air traffic control.
Air traffic control, but for space.
But for space.
Exactly.
But isn't that a logistical nightmare?
I mean, it is a massive undertaking.
It's thousands of objects.
It is thousands of objects.
Moving at thousands of miles an hour.
All moving at incredible speeds.
How do you...
It's a huge challenge.
Keep track of all that.
But it's a challenge they're up to.
And it's not just about preventing damage.
Right. It's not just about protecting the satellites.
Wasted satellites themselves.
We're also talking about the risk of creating more debris, which could lead to what's called the Kessler syndrome.
The Kessler syndrome.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
Where one collision leads to another.
It's a chain reaction. One collision leads to another.
And another, and then you just have this...
And you end up with a cloud of debris.
Cloud of debris.
That's basically a death trap for anything.
That's a death trap for anything.
Trying to operate in space.
Trying to operate in space? That's a chilling thought.
It is a chilling thought.
But it's a very real possibility.
A very real possibility if we don't manage space traffic carefully.
Okay, so that's government-run satellites.
Government-run satellites.
But what about all the...
Yeah, what about all the private companies?
Private companies launching their own stuff into space.
That's a whole other ballgame.
How do they fit into the equation?
Yeah, the rise of commercial space activity is a real game changer.
It's a game changer.
It is. It's opening up all sorts of new possibilities.
Like what?
But it also creates new challenges.
Like, are there rules in place?
But that's the question, isn't it?
To make sure these companies are playing by the rules.
Are there any rules? Are there any regulations?
Or is it basically a free-for-all up there?
Well, there's some international agreements.
Okay.
But they were mostly written back when space was dominated by governments.
Right.
So they're not really equipped.
They're not really.
To deal with the complexities of a commercialized space environment.
Right. So we need a new set of rules.
We do.
For this new space age.
We need a new rule book for the new space age.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to encourage innovation and economic growth.
But we also want to protect...
the space environment.
The space environment.
For everybody.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance to strike.
It is a tricky balance.
You don't want to stifle innovation.
You don't want to stifle innovation.
But you also don't want to end up...
But you don't want it to be a free-for-all.
Other cosmic Wild West.
You don't want it to be the Wild West up there.
Right. And this brings us to another interesting question.
What's that?
How does the rise of commercial space activity impact national security?
That is a great question.
You mean because
now you have private companies?
Now you have private companies launching satellites that could be used to
that could potentially be used to gather intelligence.
Gather intelligence.
To support military operations.
Or even support military operations.
It blurs the lines between the public and private sectors.
It does.
In a way that we've never seen before.
Right.
I mean...
So on the one hand...
That
could give the Space Force...
You could give them access.
Access to all these new...
To a whole range of capabilities and technologies.
That
they might not have otherwise.
Right. But on the other hand...
You're
relying on these private companies.
You're relying on private companies.
And what about the security?
And what about the security of their systems? What if they get hacked? What if their data gets compromised?
So it's like a whole new set?
It's a whole new set of challenges.
Of challenges for national security.
National security, absolutely.
It seems like the Space Force is...
It seems like they're having to constantly evolve.
To keep up.
To keep up with this rapidly changing landscape.
With this rapidly changing...
landscape of
space. Yeah, it's a fast-moving target.
But what about the people?
Right? What about the people?
who make up
the Space Force.
the Space Force we touched on.
We did. We talked about crewmen earlier.
But
I'm curious.
What kind of individuals?
Yeah, what kind of people are they looking for?
Are they looking for because they're realizing they need more?
They're realizing that they need more than just traditional military skills.
Than just traditional.
They need a diverse range of talent.
Military skills. From cybersecurity experts to engineers to data analysts.
Yeah.
People who can think outside the box.
There's one recruitment video.
I think I saw that one.
That specifically mentioned the need for people with skills.
They were talking about gaming, and a passion for space.
Yeah,
they're looking for a different kind of recruit.
That's a far cry from the image.
It is
of a stereotypical soldier.
It's a far cry from the traditional image of a soldier.
Right.
Boots on the ground kind of person.
Yeah.
They need people who are comfortable with technology.
Right. People who
grew up with it.
Grew up with technology and see space as a place of...
People who see space as a place of opportunity.
Opportunity, not just
a place of conflict.
A place of conflict.
Right. They need people who are tech savvy, adaptable, innovative.
Because, let's face it.
Because space is a pretty unconventional battleground. It is.
This has been a fascinating exploration of the challenges.
It has been fascinating.
Facing the Space Force.
It really has.
They're dealing with everything.
They're facing a lot of challenges.
From diplomatic hurdles to technological leaps.
It's a lot to juggle.
To the sheer volume of stuff.
It is.
Zipping around up there.
And it's only going to get more complicated.
And we haven't even touched on...
We haven't even scratched the surface.
The ethical considerations, the long-term sustainability...
Right, there's so much more to talk about.
...of space, or the impact of commercial space activities on national security.
We could talk about this for hours.
There's so much more to unpack.
There is.
The final part.
For the final part of our deep dive.
Where
we'll delve even deeper into the implications.
Go even deeper.
Of our expanding footprint.
It's going to be a wild ride.
In space.
So buckle up.
It's a journey that's just beginning. Okay, so we're back for the final part.
The final leg of our deep dive.
Into the U.S. Space Force.
It's been quite a ride so far.
It has been a wild ride.
We've gone from space lasers to space traffic cops.
Cosmic junk.
To cosmic junk.
The wild west of commercial space.
And the wild west of commercial space activity.
It's a lot to take in.
But I think it's important. Yeah.
I think we should...
To zoom out.
Zoom out a little bit. And think about the big picture.
And think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What does all this...
Right, like what does it all mean?
Mean for us.
Down here on Earth.
Down here.
Yeah, how does this impact our daily lives?
Right. How does the existence of a Space Force...
Right. Does it really...
actually impact our daily lives?
To the average person.
Is this just like a...
Yeah, this is just some abstract...
military strategy thing?
Military thing that doesn't really affect us?
Right.
That's a good question. And I think the answer is...
Yeah.
It goes beyond. Just military strategy or national security.
Right.
It really touches on our relationship with space itself.
Oh, wow.
And how we see our place in the universe.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing.
When you think about it.
When you really think about it.
We went from
staring up at the stars in awe.
Staring up at the stars.
To sending people into space.
To actually sending people.
And now we have a military branch.
Into space. And now...
We're dedicated to operating up there.
We have a whole branch of the military.
It's incredible.
Dedicated to space.
It really is a testament to human ingenuity.
It is.
But it also forces us.
But it also makes us ask.
To confront some pretty profound questions.
Some big questions.
Like, what are our responsibilities in space?
Right. What are the
ethical implications
actually doing up there
of militarizing this new frontier?
One thing that's become clear to me...
What's that?
Is that space isn't...
Yeah, it's not just science fiction anymore.
Abstract concepts.
It's not just something we read about in books.
Anymore.
It's real. Yeah. And it affects our lives.
It's woven into...
every single day.
The fabric of our life.
Whether we realize it or not. Think about it.
Yeah.
We rely on space for everything.
I know, it's crazy.
Communication navigation.
Yeah.
Weather forecasting.
I know.
Environmental monitoring.
It's crazy.
It's become as essential to modern life as electricity or the internet.
It's true. And as we become
more dependent on it,
more dependent on space,
we also become more vulnerable.
To any disruptions.
The disruptions, yeah.
Whether it's like
technical failures,
natural events like a solar flare
or even hostile actions.
Right, or even hostile actions by
other countries.
Betraying their countries.
That's why the Space Force's mission is so crucial.
It is.
It's not just about projecting military power.
Like waving our flag.
It's about protecting our way of life.
Up in space?
It's about safeguarding the space-based systems that we all rely on.
It's almost like we've
expanded our sphere of responsibility.
Yeah, our sphere of responsibility.
It's a species.
As a species.
We're no longer just caretakers of Earth.
Right.
We're caretakers of space as well.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is a lot of responsibility. And with that responsibility, comes a need.
Comes a need for a new way of thinking.
For a new way of thinking.
About
security and cooperation.
Security and cooperation.
We need to figure out
how do we all get along?
How to coexist peacefully
up there
and sustainably in this new domain.
You know, it's a little daunting.
It is a bit daunting.
But it's also incredibly exciting. Because
we're essentially
writing the rules.
Writing the rules for a whole new era.
For a whole new chapter.
Of human history.
One
where space plays a central role.
Yeah, and I think...
And the Space Force is right at the forefront of this.
Is at the forefront of that?
Figuring out how to navigate this uncharted territory.
Yeah, figuring out how to make this work.
And it's not just about military power.
Right.
It's about diplomacy.
Yeah.
Collaboration.
Yeah.
And responsible stewardship of space.
And I think one of the key takeaways...
Yeah, one of the big takeaways...
From this whole deep dive...
From our deep dive...
Is that the future?
Is that the future of space? Is not set in stone.
Isn't predetermined?
It's not predetermined.
It's something
we're actively shaping now.
Actively.
With every decision we make, every technology we develop, every agreement we forge.
It's a shared responsibility.
It is a shared responsibility.
But just for,
not just for governments.
Governments in the military.
In military organizations.
But for everybody.
But for everyone on Earth.
On Earth.
Because what happens in space ultimately affects us all.
This has been a real eye-opener for me.
It has been an incredible journey.
It really has.
Of exploration.
It made me realize...
And I hope it sparks...
How much I took space for granted.
Some curiosity.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit of awe.
And how complex.
In you too.
And challenging.
It's a fascinating topic.
This new frontier really is.
It really is.
And for anyone listening.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to learn more.
Who wants to.
I encourage you to check out.
Learn more.
The sources that we use for this deep dive.
I highly encourage you to.
They're packed with great information.
Check out the sources we used for this deep dive.
And as we wrap up.
They are.
I want to leave you with one final thought.
Packed with
fascinating information.
As space becomes more accessible.
Okay.
And commercialized.
Yeah.
With companies offering space tourism.
I've heard about that. And even plans for lunar settlements.
Wow.
What do you think the future holds for the Space Force?
That's a good question.
Will they become...
I don't know.
Intergalactic peacekeepers?
Maybe.
Cosmic traffic cops?
Or something else entirely?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is a question worth pondering.
Because the answers...
will
shape the destiny of humanity.
Wow.
In the 21st century and beyond.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
On this deep dive into...
It's been a pleasure.
The U.S. Space Force.
Exploring this with you.
Until next time, keep looking up.